So as an illustration to talk about some other important aspects of teaching, I want to tell you a story. The story is about a man who was walking along the shore. He woke up early one morning and went out along the shoreline, and he noticed that the shore was covered with starfish. The man's friends came down to where this gentleman was and asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm throwing starfish back into the ocean." The friends replied and asked him, "Why would you do that? There are so many starfish out here, and there's no way that you can get them all back into the ocean." The man gently reached down, picked up a starfish, and tossed it back into the water, then turned to his friends and said, "But I helped that one." Our job as teachers is not to worry about all of the starfish on the shoreline. Our job as teachers is to focus on one. God will take care of all the rest of them that need to be helped in that lesson. You focus on the one that you can help. Now, how do you do that? You know your material and you know your audience. You also need to make sure that you know your environment. The man was walking along the shoreline. He didn't take anything with him. He didn't take a net. He didn't take something to fish with. He didn't take a boat to go out into the water. He used what he had in that environment to help that one starfish. Now, should you have the goal of helping more than one? Always. But you need to take the pressure off of yourself. Allow the Holy Spirit to work within you, to use you, that in knowing your audience, knowing your content, and knowing your environment. Now, you may say, well, I teach in a room. Well, yes, most of us do teach in a room, not necessarily an outdoor amphitheater or some other setting. But in that room, how do you set it up? Do you have folks in chairs facing you as the teacher? Do you have folks age appropriately sitting on the floor? Do you have people at round tables so that they're looking at one another and can have a discussion? And even if your response is, well, I don't have tables, well, you can still put chairs in circles to set an environment that allows for more discussion and collaboration. Why is that important? Because it's time for us to move from being the sage on the stage as the teacher who just delivers information to being the guide on the side. And by becoming the guide on the side, number one, your class goes so much quicker. Time flies when people are engaged and having fun. And as we talk about planning a little later, we'll talk about how to plan for that. Becoming the guide on the side takes a lot of pressure off of you as the teacher, because when you ask questions, you then allow people time to process. You also don't set yourself up that you're giving a 45-minute lecture. Now, lecture is an old standby of teaching practice, but it's really not the most effective use of our time or of your students' time. Lecture is one delivery system among many others that you can choose from. And I want to challenge you, use lecture as your last choice, not as your first choice. So you've got an environment, you've got a classroom, you've chosen, I'm not going to lecture this whole time. I've got my participants in small groups or in pairs, depending on the size of your audience. And you're going to set up this physical environment so it doesn't look like you're the most important person in the room. Remember, in an earlier session, we talked about it's not always about you as the teacher. It is always about the students and what they understand, glean, or learn from your teaching. So you're going to set up an environment that allows collaboration. It allows discussion. It allows what we in the education world call think time. Think time is when you allow your students literally to think through the questions that you've asked. And often as teachers, we ask a question and then we provide our own response, or we call on the first one that answers. And it doesn't matter if you're teaching children or teaching adults. Think time is very important. We all process speech at different rates. We all produce speech at different rates. But trying to get everyone on the same page so that the ability for you to speak and someone to process is what we call think time. How would you create think time in a classroom? Well, you would ask a question and then you would be quiet. Being quiet as a teacher, one who is used to lecturing, is one of the most difficult things to do. Sometimes as teachers, the quiet makes us nervous. If we're teaching children, sometimes the quiet in our minds will allow students to get off task, to get distracted, when more often than not, think time simply allows the person who's listening to process all of the words that you've just given to them. For example, if I ask you to think about your favorite teacher, school, college, preschool, church, think about your favorite teacher. Allow their image to come up in your brain. Now think about what's one characteristic that made them such a significant teacher in your life. Sometimes those pauses that can seem so awkward are the most important part of your lesson. Because if I just ask you, think about an important teacher, think about what made them important in your life. Now, those important teachers are what we want to become. Most of us really didn't even slow down to think about who an important teacher was or what those characteristics were that made them such a significant or important teacher in your life. Because the rate at which I'm giving you directions didn't allow you to then process those questions and make it relevant. Remember, relevance is very important to someone taking what you're trying to teach with them past the time that they're sitting with you. Part of that will be allowing them the time to process. If you're unsure that all the participants in your class, whether it's adults or kids, are able to come up with this particular teacher, then have them pair up with one another. You also then, after some think time, want to give enough wait time that folks get to share. I'm a big user of timers. I love timers. Now that we have phones and watches, it's so easy. I remember the old timer that you would set and then allow it to ding, and that's what told us to move on. Now, though, you can manage your time so much easier by saying, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about this. And then the key is not just tell them that you're going to give them 30 seconds, but actually allowing the 30 seconds of quiet or murmur to exist in the space that you are teaching. Those times that we allow space in the environments that we're teaching are very, very important. Because I may listen to a friend or hear someone share something that's very personal to them that then engages me, that what I had to say was kind of important too. So many times in the church, we focus on the big miracles. And those are important. But there are also small miracles that happen every day. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people, and when I ask about their testimony, their first response is, oh, well, I don't have a testimony. And my response is, wait, but you believe in Jesus. You want to follow him every day. You've been on this journey for a little while. You have a testimony. Well, yeah, but it's not as life-changing as, and fill in the blank. Well, the last time I checked, the splendor of the story isn't what Christ measures us on. He measures us on the daily walk. Your story is important. Your story is valid. If we give our students nothing else than the ability to process questions and realize that their story is important, then that's a gift that again takes them far beyond any lesson or any topic or any teaching series. Just the ability to think and process in that environment could be life-changing.